Forest bathing is not about reinventing the wheel.
Can you tell us a bit about the specifics of what forest bathing is?
So it doesn't have to be any more complicated than going into a woodland or a place that you like, sitting down and just trying to be present with the environment.
This is Wild by Nature, stories of human connection to the wild. This is a podcast exploring how nature, ancient wisdom and lived experience guide us back to purpose, balance and belonging. I'm your host, Vian Sharif, and if you've ever felt the pull to slow down, reconnect and listen more closely to the world around you, you're in the right place. Welcome to Wild by Nature. Nature gives us everything. Air, water and food. But in modern life, many of us treat it like it's something optional, something we visit instead of something we belong to. But today's guest, Gary Evans, who's the co-author of The Healing Power of Trees and the co-founder of the Forest Bathing Institute, which is an organisation focused on the science and practice of using nature to improve health and well-being. Gary's really delving into the science of why this is. Can you tell us a bit about the specifics of what forest bathing is? How do we, what is different from just going for a walk or going for a hike?
So nature tends to be a backdrop to our activity. So the primary purpose of the trip to nature doesn't tend to be nature itself. If you think about the types of things we do, so walking with friends and family, taking the kids out, running, cycling, horse riding. So we're not focused on the environment necessarily. So the difference with a forest bathing visit is I am going out today to focus on nature. I'm going to look around me, whether it's in the garden, a local park, a woodland. And I'm just going to soak it in through my senses. There's no rush. There's no destination. Once you're in nature, that you reach the destination. And then now it's about just looking around through the senses. So, what's visually interesting, the interesting smells from the flowers or the plants. We've done research with the University of Sheffield about the air chemistry, so gas chromatography and mass spectrometry. So there's unique chemical profiles in ancient woodlands and woodlands compared to gardens. That's the peer-reviewed study we did. And once you find somewhere that you like, sit down. So it doesn't have to be any more complicated than going into a woodland or a place that you like, sitting down and just trying to be present with the environment. But for those that don't have mindfulness skills and the mind's used to racing around, like if we've got things that are on our minds, one of the things we found at the University of Derby is that being in nature can help rumination, which is where you're replaying upsetting or troubling thoughts over and over. So for anybody like that, that's where a guide can be helpful. We run sessions across the UK, or just go out and we wrote the Forest Bathing Guide for Forestry England, which you can find on their website. There's lots of information on our website. And just do some nice deep breathing to try and settle the mind. That's the key.
Gary, this is an interesting point you raise around engaging all of your senses. The idea that once you arrive in the place that we tend to be led by one or other of our senses, if not our minds, which are just racing continue. Can you just walk us through that journey of how would we think about it? So we're sitting, and then how do we start to really think, okay, I'm going to isolate my visual, I'm going to actually tune into what I'm hearing, I'm going to think about what I'm smelling and absorbing. How does that work?
A few of my key tips, because part of this is teaching people about themselves, which I enjoy. So most people don't realise that the human eye can detect the biggest range of colour in the green spectrum, because it's in the middle of our colour range. So you've got red and blue either side. So when you go into nature, you can see this huge variation in the shades of green. So just a very simple exercise is, okay, look around you at the different shades of green and see if any of them are more enjoyable, feel calming, to you? Do you like the darker colours or the more vivid? I mean, at this time of the year, it's perfect. Lots of new growth. And then if you see something interesting, I mean, a lot of the leaves that are on the trees are very soft to the touch now. So you can just be playful. So it is going back to how we would have been in nature when we were young. So forest bathing is not about reinventing the wheel. I've got a 5-year-old son who enjoys get completely absorbed in like an acorn cap for 5 minutes. Suddenly realizes that each little dot on an acorn cap is completely unique and no two acorn caps are ever going to be the same. So he can look at one of those for 5 minutes, and then of course he's running around.
Yeah.
Call him the tornado. So he's bouncing between the two arms of the nervous system. So he's going into the parasympathetic, very slow, attention focused, and his body gives him extra ability to pick up definition when he's stationary. So what the body does is when we're moving fast with a high heart rate, it says, okay, Gary wants to get to a meeting very quickly, but he doesn't need to know about the finer detail in a leaf. He doesn't need a very sensitive sense of smell or hearing. I'm just going to put all my focus into moving the muscles so he can move. So when rangers that have been in the forest for 2 decades come out with us, their job is to go and do a tree survey down the other end of their site. They've never spent this slow-paced time. So I don't worry if someone's been there for 2, 3, 4, 5 decades. At the end of the session, they say, oh, I thought I knew it all. And you've completely changed my mind because we're using completely different abilities of our bodies. So part of forest bathing is actually teaching people about themselves, their body, what it was designed to do, and the full range of its functions. And I always find that fascinating. So yeah, explain to people how you can, the sense of touch. We did a piece for BBC Earth and they said, oh, what's the evidence around the sense of touch? So I started to look into the research around that. So touch releases the oxytocin love hormone in the brain, which is why we hold people's hands and hug them. So it's a bonding mechanism. So if we're not touching nature, if we don't have that tactile response, love is not very far away from caring and looking after. So a lot of what I try to do is, okay, get people hands-on, feel what nature means to them, and chances are they then jump to protecting and preserving. So if we haven't got people that know nature, then they haven't built up that sense of connection to love and protect it. So that, I would say, is one of the biggest things anybody can do is get hands-on and explore the sensitivity of the fingertips. It's not the palm. Very, very sensitive, the fingertips are just very slow. So it's good for gardeners.
And Gary, just as an aside, I do recall a study around the sense of smell, and I think it was very much set in a Japanese environment where different groups were exposed to the scent of pine forests. Do you remember that study or something similar?
Well, yeah, I've got the breakdown on the alpha pinene in the pine. So Professor Lee, because he's an immunologist in Japan, so this is how we ended up with this body of work related to the immunology and how the immune system, because he was measuring the blood. So alpha pinene is one of the trifecta he identified. D-limonene, which we believe is in holly trees. And the one that's a bit harder to find in the UK, I'm still on the hunt, is cineole, because they have that in eucalyptus in Japan. But plants like rosemary do put it out. But the chances are, if we haven't got eucalyptus cineole in the UK, that it may well be that nature produces a slightly different chemical with the same effect for the immune system.
Can you help us understand when someone is walking into a forest or engaging in that sort of environment, what is actually happening to our bodies?
Well, that's a very big question. That is exactly what we're trying to get to the bottom of. So the fast pace of modern life is abusing our nervous system, using our nervous system in a way that it wasn't designed for. It's like driving around in a car at top speed all the time. Eventually, you burn out the the vehicle that you're in. So our bodies are crying out for more of this parasympathetic rest and digest. You can think of it as the restorative system. So when we go for a walk in the woods, it is a balancing mechanism. And that's really the incredible opportunity that you get when you go for a walk in the woods. So it's called a personal adjustment effect. So what they found in Japan is that, for example, with blood pressure, people that go in with high blood pressure, the blood pressure came down, and people that went in with low blood pressure came up. So it normalizes. So it's working on a balancing homeostasis level because stress suppresses the body's ability to balance itself. So it can lead to a lot of secondary issues. So we're currently doing EEG and HRV research with the University of Bournemouth. Very excited about that project. We're also creating a virtual environment for prisons, hospitals, care homes, etc., that would involve some of the um, sensory inputs that we have available in the forest.
How are you actually taking it from a concept and something that we all intuitively feel down to that data point that is actually going to be useful at a broader level and also to prove the case out?
Each university likes to use different psychometric scales. So we've had 3 universities measure improvements to anxiety, for example. So a lot of different psychometric scales, and it depends on the population groups, because we did a study with UCL for NHS referrals and social prescribing. And where possible, that's where we do the physiological monitoring.
I remember through reading some of Kathy Willis's work around specifically the Japanese case, where some of this data really started to be, I think, pioneered. But please do tell us more about this.
Yes. Well, that was what caught my wife and I's attention. So it was Japan. And at this point, we're actually in touch with Professor Lee in Japan, who coined the term forest bathing. He is a friend of mine and coined the term forest bathing in English. Prior to that, it was Shinrin Yoku. So he's told me directly, because I spent some time in Thailand. We were both flown out there to do a study together. So how it worked and evolved in Japan in the 80s, prior to mobile phones, they identified digital devices causing techno stress. And this was leading to burnout and, at the worst end of it, suicide in cities in Japan. So the government decided to reach out to the universities, and they said, what are the health benefits of nature? And this is what set this whole thing in motion. So prior to this happening, we were all just looking at psychometric data, but doctors can't make a direct comparison psychometric to physiological data that they have for conventional treatments. So what the system they developed in Japan was to give doctors a direct way of seeing what 2 hours in the forest looked like for blood pressure compared to a blood pressure reduction tablet, for example. And then it has the same system in place of checks and balances. So you go to a forest therapy base in Japan, you might meet a nurse or doctor, they take your blood pressure, you do 2 hour walk around the forest, you return to the nurse or doctor, take blood pressure. So now we want to know if this forest, which we've identified generally helps people, helps this individual. And if it does, then it can become part of their healthcare plan. So that's what we saw happening in Japan. So I've done about 350 interviews at this point, got the national conversation started. So we're the first ones into all the national press, Metro and things. And then it took on a bit of a life of its own, you could say, the forest bathing movement.
But I also want to come back to your experience for the path that took you here, because it sounds like there was a road to this, and in going on that journey, you found forest bathing, which I also touch on in a little bit more detail, because forest bathing I don't think is like going for a hike or a walk. But first, your background. How did you get to be so captivated by this particular concept?
I think one of my better qualities is my sense of curiosity. and I became very curious about the existential life questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Why are we all here? And what have peoples over the millennia had to say about that? So I travelled somewhere before I was aware of my emissions on planes. I did about 100 to 200,000 miles around the planet. Um, yeah, so about, and I was ended up as a tour guide in Egypt, 7 tours up and down the Nile with guests from all over the world. Once you start to understand that the Egyptian temples were built over 1,000 years, you understand that people in the past have been using time and looking at time very differently. But at the same time, like I was in Machu Picchu and seeing the reactions of the people with me there when we were meditating, or inside the Great Pyramid, taking them inside Stonehenge. So I started to become very interested in the impact of the landscape on our emotional world. So going up the top of like active volcanoes and seeing how we feel. So going into some quite unusual environments. But on my honeymoon, but we got married in Russia, and I said to my wife, "Okay, well, if we go to Paris for the first part of the honeymoon, and then can we go to the south of France to the Rennes-le-Château area, which is full of mystique. Most notable names from history have been there, going all the way back to Neanderthals. Dan Brown wrote about it in his books, and so it was one on my list. And again, I got the same message there. This place is special because of the feeling from the environment. But we ended up in somewhere called Nebius Labyrinth, an ancient oak forest that's grown over a limestone plateau, and the rains eroded this labyrinth, and then the oak forest grew over the top. And it carved out a kind of rectangular shape in the middle that people had put steps into. So we were meditating there. And I suddenly realized I don't need to take people into ancient Egyptian temples for deep meditation experiences, but nature creates, you could say, a place of connection all around us. Any woodland, or even just one tree, can be a place just to settle ourselves from the busyness of life. And it's a lot easier to roll out at scale forest bathing with the data. And so that's why we threw our lives into bringing forest bathing to the UK in a very accessible format.
Gary, it sounds like we need your list of places to go. I think that would be
Quite a long one.
quite a long one. What an extraordinary one.
Your
Um,
closest ancient woodland is the short answer. Don't confuse plantation monoculture woodlands, which are more like tree nurseries. These are the woodlands that most of us have got used to. It's not how Mother Nature creates forests. So look for diversity of species.
it's interesting you say that. You catch me at a moment where I'm in the grounds of Blenheim, and on a walk this morning, I understood that we were walking through ancient oak trees,
Mm.
um, and they're quite extraordinary. They definitely are not manicured. They are. There's a really interesting quality about them that it doesn't feel like our normal monoculture forests.
Well, from my research, ancient oak groves were the original parliaments in this country.
Is that so? Say more about that.
Druid translates as oak knower. I mean, we've got very little information on the original Druids, but we do have a few reports from the ancient Romans before they burnt them out of existence, and they gathered in oak groves to make communal decisions, and that's what we know. So there is definitely something very special, and they have been something of huge significance in this country for thousands of years.
My goodness, that definitely demands further research, Gary.
I'm
But
working on it.
yeah,
Unfortunately, we've
I was
taken
actually
most of them out of
talking.
existence, but as of this week, I've now got my top lists across the country. Yeah, so Sherwood, where we run events, we've got our team running events. That's one of the best collections of ancient oaks in the country. Savernak's another great location people could go to.
Gary, fantastic. And I hope we can put some of
But I
these
think you're in a good spot there.
if we understand this way of dealing with our physical condition, what impact does that have then on governmental policy, on healthcare policy, and so on? What is your experience in that space, and what's the potential, do you think?
So, yeah, if we go back to 2015, no conversation in the press about health and nature, no articles on forest bathing. So there was no conversation. And Boris Johnson did do one thing, which is it was a 5.5 million Death for a Natural England NHS green social prescribing pilot that he launched. So there's a lot happening, but it's not a joined up approach. What we want is a centralized government, because this is how it was. A lot of it was led by central government in Japan, and we've also had a delegation from South Korea. So I've heard from the South Korea is actually at the front of this, because what happened there was that the Minister for the Environment was a forest therapy researcher at a university, and then he became Minister of the Environment. So they actually spent $100 million on a clinic in Woodland, which I think that is the most expensive forest therapy clinic on the planet, to my knowledge. So we had their senior delegation to come over and see what we're doing. So they told me how to scale it in 5 to 7 years with government advertising, and I had the similar sort of briefing from Japan. So we've got all the pieces. We've got models. Yeah, there's been trailblazers, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. And we're also in touch with the economists at Forestry England, who have been publishing papers on like 150 million savings in England just on woodland use for healthcare. So we can scale that up with widespread intervention.
Gary, this is an interesting point to consider in this context, I think, which is what happens if we don't do this? What happens if we remain, let's say, disconnected? And many people, as you said, as you say, I mean, certainly when I was growing up, I didn't have an experience of being particularly close to nature. I lived in a very urban environment. I had the park, which I loved, obviously. But it was only when I started going to the countryside and then further afield to Southern Africa specifically, where I suddenly engaged with nature in a way that was just so overwhelmingly natural. And we're moving slightly away from forests here, that I couldn't not engage with it. It was so unbelievably powerful. So I guess interesting to hear your perspectives on what happens if we don't do these things. What happens when we remain disconnected?
I think we already know, because it is the world around us right now. So we know we're currently on the trajectory. If we don't change our ways, I mean, there's not going to be much left of nature and these natural spaces. I mean, I've carried out a widespread survey of what is left in this country, and it is heartbreaking. So if you think of ancient woodlands as natural hospitals with this incredible, unique fingerprint of air chemistry that has a whole wide range of benefits that we're still scratching the surface on. And we're like little children that hardly understand what is available to us. Well, we are at the point in time where we're going to obliterate the ancient woodlands. There's less than 2% left of what was here. So are in danger of destroying it before we even understand its value, personally and monetarily, because you can't replace a woodland that's developed over centuries by planting a monoculture down the road. These are not the equivalents. So yes, a big part of what is in my heart when I'm talking about getting people tactile, hands-on, and that's people of all ages. I mean, we've had 6 months to 90 plus, I think, at our session. So this is something that's accessible to all. So get as many people hands on and feel what nature means to them. I think many of us know it should be the simplest thing. Our bodies developed in nature. There's definitely this deep sense of connection when people go into the woodlands and other environments. I mean, whatever environment you've got, if you can just slow down from that fast pace of modern life and just see how it feels, how good does it feel just to just take a deep breath and be rather than doing? and then hope whatever your contribution is, to put us on a different trajectory. That's the invitation, really. What's in your heart? But I can tell from the hundreds coming to train with us, and we're part of the global movement as well, that there's definitely more and more people that feel this is critically important, not just for our own helping people that are having a hard time with the challenges of modern life. Too much. Simple as that. We are bombarded, but also to save the homes of endangered species and expand the ancient woodlands. It can be done. The ancient woodlands are basically they're acorns of biodiversity. So anytime you can create a bit of space around an ancient woodland, it's going to go. That's what woodlands do. They grow outwards. So we can put some of the wrongs right. That's the good news.
Gary, just a few very practical questions to, I guess, inspire our listeners to take action. Obviously, they can engage with the forest bathing movement through all of the great work that you're doing. Very specifically, how much time in nature do you think we actually need to have to see any kind of benefit in your experience or your studies?
That's a great question. Any time is better than no time.
Yes.
That is, yeah. So there's been studies done. Even having a plant in an apartment in a city is better for people's mental health than no plant being there at all. So, I mean, that's how fundamental it is to us. So having street trees, incredible benefits to just having street trees. So if you can't get to a park and that's what you've got at your disposal, just get to know the trees on your street. So use what you've got around you. And if you just do it with this mindful engagement, just slowing down, you're going to be think of your nervous system under constant pressure, and whatever windows you can create to take pressure off of that system, you will be doing yourself a big favour. Particularly, it does get a bit sort of feeling a bit claustrophobic inside. Like if you're working on something and it's a problem you can't solve or a creative project, just get outside for a few minutes and use what you've got, and you may well find the answer comes to you, because we're moving into different parts of the brain when we're engaging with nature, just looking at the fractal pattern. So the big tree trunk going to a smaller branch, smaller branch, smaller branch. If you just look at that, you have to use a different area of the brain to decode those natural patterns away from work deadlines. I need to make lunch for the kids, shopping. So whatever's kind of on the mind, you're going to move away from that if you're just looking from absorbing the beauty and majesty of nature. So short trips are fine. Everybody should find an accessible starting point, and hopefully what you'll find as you do this more regularly, you're going to have an inclination to extend the time, and perhaps once a month or every few months, if you can get out to a woodland, then ideally you could say getting towards the maximum effect, at least 2 hours, or perhaps stay somewhere overnight for up to 48 hours. And you may the immune system will improve if you reduce stress load. The immune response is suppressed by stress. So that, as a minimum, if you did a 48-hour trip, and we're hoping to identify with universities in the future that perhaps as we're absorbing all of these chemicals that are present, we may well be boosting the immune system directly as well.
Well, I know I'll be going out to that ancient woodland tomorrow morning, Gary.
Make the most of it while you can, particularly if
I
you're visiting
will.
somewhere. And don't overlook little parks. My sanity was saved by a little park in Farringdon. Yeah, when I was living in the centre of the city.
I mean that perhaps is a nice way to close our conversation today, Gary, which is that park saved your sanity. If someone is feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, mentally stuck, which is a feeling we can all relate to in these times, what is the smallest shift they could actually do today?
Well, hopefully we're going to inspire people to get outside more often. The key thing that my yoga teacher taught me was that tension and emotions build up in the body. So the body's a bit like a battery and stores things. And so we do need to find a release mechanism of some sort. So forest bathing or just being in your garden and taking some nice slow breaths may be a way that you can release things. But I'd strongly encourage everybody to find a way of releasing stress and tension, because the conversation's typically about stress, but actually the problem is suppressed stress. So stress that has been stored and builds up in the body. So we all want to find, hopefully, an enjoyable way to release stress and tension. Of course, if anyone's in a very difficult place, then it's reach out to mental health charities, like community groups. There's lots of groups online where people are going through similar things. Because much like the trees, a tree prefers to be part of a forest, and we are social animals. And so, feeling alone can be really difficult. So finding peer support or community support, I would actively encourage. Or the support of trees, if that feels more accessible during difficult times.
Gary, this has really reframed a perspective on nature and forests in a way that perhaps we hadn't imagined before. And I'm so glad that we were able to bring out some of these insights. Before we close, you're obviously deeply engaged with this work as a public good. This is critically important to how our society can move forward in a healthy way. And we are. It always sounds it sounds funny to say or trite to say, and we are also nature. We are part of nature, and we forget that every now and again. And then,
yes.
Yes.
Well, that's to do with education. We're working on that bit. But yes, we are born from and returned to. And I think most of us feel very good surrounded by. So hopefully we can help a few people today. And there's a lot of joy. A lot of the positive emotions can be evoked by time spent in nature. And I think we probably all would like more of those.
And Gary, where can people find out more about your work?
Websites, Tango Foxtrot Bravo, tfb.institute. So we've got huge amounts of information. You can find our peer-reviewed research on there. I'm very active on LinkedIn, got a great community on there. Always happy to hear from senior stakeholders, other universities, particularly if it's universities that are interested in doing physiological measures. We're trying to move the goalpost.
I think that is a brilliant point to end on, Gary. These are benefits that we have only just scratched the surface of, many of which we haven't even begun to understand or document what these benefits are. And in many cases, I'm sure they are priceless. So
they are. In our darkest hour, a time of real need, when our soul is crying out for help, where a lot of people have found solace is in nature. Maybe they just feel more comfortable going and having a good cry with a tree, whatever it might be. So in our darkest hour, the value of nature is priceless.
Gary, thank you so much for this conversation and the work that you're doing to contribute to all of our well-being and that of nature.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wild by Nature. If today's conversation sparked reflection, grounded you, or reminded you of what matters, take a moment to stay connected. Follow Wild by Nature on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join me as we continue exploring what it means to live in relationship with the earth and with each other. We'll see you next time.